guys, and welcome to this video. So just a heads up, this one's gonna get kind of deep and you can go way deeper than what I am going to explain to you. So just a little disclaimer before we get started. This is the introduction to ethical philosophy. The terms I'm going to introduce to you are probably brand new. I mean, some of them you're going to be more familiar with, but there's a lot more to them. So I'm just going to give you the icing on the cake with these, just what you're going to need to know to get started. But then I highly recommend, as you start using these and get more comfortable with them, dive into that next step, because these are really important terms that are going to be really beneficial for you as a debater. My biggest recommendation with value criterions, there are so many out there. You can go so many different directions with a value criterion. It can be theories, contracts, words, ethics, there's millions, probably not that many, but millions of value criterions that are possible. So when I started out, I did some research to find a way that I could, find some that were all in one space, that were a little less complex, but it also offered complex ones. And while doing my research on the old Google, I discovered this website. If you look up Lincoln Douglas debate value criterion definitions, this website will pop up Angel Fire, and it'll be like A to Z definitions for LD values or something like that, and it's Angel Fire. You can click on it. The website looks a little sketch, but I promise it has good information, and it's just a list of like all these different value criterions you can use. There's even some values on there that you just can like look at, read, and it's really helpful because it explains them in a way and uses the simplest definition. So if you don't know what something is, that is a great place to go to like figure it out in basic terms, what that means. And then don't ever cite it. If you're giving a definition, don't ever say, I got my definition from Angel Fire, because it's not very credible. But every term I've used from it has been correct, so I definitely trust it as a way to get your information. But then maybe like once you find what you're looking for, so like if you're looking for deontology's on there, you see it, it'll explain it in basic terms, and you can be like, oh, okay, I kind of understand, and then type deontology definition on Google, and it'll pop up with more credible sources like Stanford or Harvard or Cambridge, something like that. It's a really beneficial website, and I highly suggest you use it. It'll really help you out. So some of the most common value criterions you're going to hear, there's really one biggie, but there's branches to it. Utilitarianism. Get comfortable with saying it, because either it's going to be part of your case or it's going to be a part of your opponent's case at one time or another. And it's a good one. Now, there's two little branches of utilitarianism. You can hear someone, specifically novices, say utilitarianism as their value criterion, and that's great. It's acceptable, perfect, wonderful. But then when you get a little farther, starting JV, definitely varsity, you're gonna hear people say rule utilitarianism or act utilitarianism. And so just so you kind of know what those are, rule is preferred. The definition of it is just the greatest good for people. It actually kind of leaves off the greatest number of people, which is beneficial because then it doesn't have the whole suppressing minority aspect. So that's a really good one. I always do rule. I think it's preferred, and I know a lot of debaters would say the exact same thing. It's just the preferred branch of util. If you're not going to go with basic util, go with rule, just because it's so much better. I think it's better. And then act util is another one. You can totally use it, and it's great. It's fine. I've personally never used it, so I'm not as familiar with it, but you can definitely find some really good articles on it out there from really credible sources. Okay, and there's two more that I want to mention to you. They're not crazy common. One's more common than the other, but you're definitely going to want to know these, because it'll be really cool if you can pull these out as a novice, because it's going to get you bonus points. actually there are no bonus points in debate, but like it looks really good to a judge if you can like mention these and like know what you're talking about and make a really good point. Also, as a novice, not many of them are going to know what they are. So that's also an advantage. If they don't know what it is, they can't attack it, and then you just kind of run with it. So the first one is deontology. You heard me reference this earlier just for like an example, but deontology is the study of the nature of duty and obligation. I'm not as familiar with its definition. I've only used it once or twice, and it wasn't even really deontology. It was the branch of it. It's a Greek term. A lot of these philosophy terms come from Greece. Ancient Greek philosophers really like hammered these out, and they're used a lot in debate. I believe Aristotle did deontology, but it might have been another Plato. I'm not positive, but there's definitely stuff out there on it. You know, Google, I searched it earlier to see what results were like, and there's some really good articles out there just explaining it in simple terms. And then also there's like some really complex articles that when you're ready to take it up to that next level, there's some good articles out there to help you step it up. Now there's a branch off, I believe there's a couple, but the best one for LD is called Deontological Ethics. Get used to, teach yourself how to say that one, because when you use it in a case, you need to make sure you can say it. I've actually used Deontological Ethics before, and it worked out really, really well for me. It's a really good value criterion to use. I highly recommend it if a case ever calls for it. Its definition is the morality of an action weighed on the action being right or wrong. So it's really good because you can kind of take it in that broad way of, first of all, morality. Is it moral? Because if what you're saying is moral, then it should be preferred. Or you can even take it in what my opponent said is not moral, so it doesn't fit deontological ethics, which is preferred in today's debate, you know? And then going down to the part that if the action is right or wrong, you can kind of look at an action and weigh it. This is a big one with LD debate because the purpose of a value criterion is to weigh something. So if you have deontological ethics and you look at an action, you have to weigh it as if it's right or wrong, and if it's moral, you want it to be right. So you need to make sure that your side of the case comes out as that right. So that way when the judge is weighing, it gets put in a perspective of right and wrong. Well, the neg, like if you're neg, oh, the neg said they were right, so they win, or like vice versa. So it's just a really good one to use. Get familiar with it. Maybe don't use it in your first case unless you really, really want to, but definitely do research on it and know what it is. And then maybe when you get to your second or third case, that would be a really good time to pull it out. If you do a lot of reading on it and stuff, then I would say use it in your first one if it applies. But it can get really complex, so I would just make sure you know what it is and you know the ins and outs of it before you start using it. And the last one, I've personally never heard someone else talk about. I've talked about it a couple of times. I talked about it a couple times my senior year when I was in varsity. So maybe at a novice level, you're not gonna hear it at all, but who knows? There's new things coming out with novices every day. It's called Locke and his social contract theory. I believe Locke's social contract is the basic one that you're going to hear if you ever hear someone refer to it. There is a wonderful picture to explain, and I will pop it up at the end of this video just so you can kind of see it, but I'll explain it. So it's a little complicated, but I promise the picture helps. So it's the government and the people and the social contract. And the social contract connects the government and the people. And so basically how it goes is if the government misuses power, then the people have the right to replace the government. And if the people are giving the government power, so the government is obligated to protect the people's rights. And so it's just like kind of this whole balance thing of like, kind of think about it as if I protect you if you protect me, and I will hold you accountable if you mess up. Like, it's just kind of that thing. It's a big round oddity, and you're definitely going to want to do more research on it if you ever talk about it. It's this complex thing, and it starts out pretty complex, and it just gets more and more and more in depth. But it's really good. It's really helpful for cases. It goes with when you are talking about society. It really goes with that, especially the United States. It's really helpful to talk about. There's also an argument, and you can look more into this because I personally don't know a lot about this aspect of it, but it's like when you are part of this social contract, according to Locke's theory, the only right that you should have to give up is your right to be a vigilante, meaning you can't, go out and find your own justice. You have to be okay with the justice that the government is providing, but then if they don't do the justice in the right way, you have the right to retaliate and say, hey, that's not right, that's not justice, and hold them accountable. And it's this big sphere of the people holding the government accountable and the government holding the people accountable, and also just like maintaining everything. So it can be this complex whirlwind, but once you figure it out, it really does just kind of get locked in your brain in that simple way, and it's really cool to pull out and around because it just looks really impressive. I mean, when you say Locke's social contract theory, it just sounds cool. So honestly, I think it's a really good one to have. I wish I would have used it more, but unfortunately I didn't. But I recommend you guys should definitely look into it. So that's it for this video. I hope it cleared some things up about philosophy. Again, this is just the introduction to philosophy. There's way more out there with all of these things, and there's also way more terms out there that I didn't even cover. I know a lot of this was just me saying research, but I feel like that's the biggest thing with philosophy. There's so many interpretations and so many definitions out there for philosophy that it's really just whatever you understand and what makes the most sense to you, which is why I really recommend Googling things and getting the simplest definition and then kind of building your way up to a more complex one. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. You might want to watch it a couple of times just to help you understand things better, and I hope your debating is going wonderfully.